All right, today we're going to build a practical toolkit for one of the most important and rewarding jobs out there, teaching in an inclusive classroom. We're not just going to talk theory here. We're going to break down proven, hands-on strategies that you can start using right away to support every single learner who walks through your door.
So let's just jump right in with the big question, the one that every inclusive educator thinks about. How in the world do you effectively teach a classroom where every single student has their own unique mix of strengths and needs? That's the core challenge we're really going to dig into today.
And here's our game plan for building that toolkit. First up, we'll start with the foundation, using strategies that we know actually work. Then we'll talk about why you have to assess before you teach. From there, we'll unpack a super powerful 5-step teaching framework, learn how to tweak it for every student, and then, finally, wrap it all up with effective classroom management.
So where do we even begin? Well, the absolute bedrock of effective teaching is using strategies that are proven to work. Seriously. This isn't about chasing the newest, shiniest trend on social media. It's about building your entire practice on a solid foundation of evidence. And this is a huge shift, you know? It moves us away from, well, I think this works, to we know this works. And that can totally change the game for your students.
And you should know, this isn't just a nice idea. It's actually a legal requirement. Laws like the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, basically say that what we do in the classroom has to be informed by scientifically based research. It's a real push away from relying on tradition or just anecdotal stories, and a move toward methods that have been shown to get results. So what does that phrase, scientifically based research, even mean? Well, at its core, it's research that uses really strict, systematic methods to back up its claims. The whole point is to get reliable, solid knowledge about what truly works in a classroom, so we can move beyond guesswork or just doing things the way they've always been done. Scientifically based research, or SBR, really boils down to 4 main things. First, it's empirical. That just means it's based on real-world observation, not just some theory. Second, it uses tough data analysis. Third, and this one's huge, its findings have to be replicable, meaning other smart people can run a similar study and get similar results. And finally, it gets published in peer-reviewed sources, where other experts can check the work.
Okay. So once you've got that foundation of using proven strategies, what's next? Well, it's all about assessment. It makes sense, right? You can't possibly use the right strategy if you don't know where your students are starting from. Great teaching always begins with truly understanding your learners. Now, assessment really comes in 2 main flavors. You've got formative assessment. Think of this like a quick checkup during the lesson. It's the feedback you're gathering on the fly to see who's with you and who might need a little extra help. Then you have summative assessment. That's more like the final exam. It's what you use at the end of a unit to see what a student has learned.
In an inclusive classroom, formative assessment is your absolute superpower. No question. It's how you spot those learning gaps, clear up any misunderstandings, and pinpoint specific challenges for individual students, all in real time. This lets you adjust your teaching right there in the moment. It's how you make instruction truly responsive.
All right, now let's talk about how all of this comes together into a really powerful, repeatable 5-step frameworks that you can use for pretty much any lesson. This is about being structured and intentional, not just reacting to what's happening in the classroom.
And that framework is called systematic instruction. The idea behind it is actually beautiful and simple, but it is so effective. You just break down any new skill or piece of knowledge into tiny, manageable parts. Then, you teach them in a logical order, starting with the easiest piece and slowly building up to the more complex stuff. This whole process plays out in 5 phases. It starts with planning, where you break up the content. Then you review. You connect the new stuff to what your students already know. After that comes the presentation, where you explain and model the new skill. That leads into guided practice. This is the super important we do it together stage where you give lots of feedback. And then finally, students are ready for independent practice to really lock in that learning.
So having a great framework like that is one thing, but let's be real. The true art of inclusive teaching is being able to adapt that framework for the unique needs of every single student in your room. And this is where differentiation comes into play.
You can differentiate your instruction in 4 main ways. You can change the content, what the student is expected to learn. You can change the process, how the student learns it, like using Braille or maybe an audiobook. You can also change the products. That's how a student shows you what they know, like doing a drawing instead of writing an essay. And finally, you can change the environment, something as simple as adjusting the seating for a student who has trouble focusing. And here is a really, really crucial piece of advice. Differentiation does not mean you have to go and create 30 different lesson plans every night. That would be impossible. The real goal is to modify as little as you need to. For a student to be successful, you should always start with the smallest, simplest change first.
Okay, the final piece of our puzzle is classroom management. And let's be clear, this is so much more than just rules and discipline. This is about intentionally creating a physical space and a social environment where every single student feels safe, supported, and truly ready to learn.
We can break down effective management into 3 main pillars. First, there's the physical environment, just arranging the room so you can easily see and get to everyone. Second is your use of time, being prepared so there's not a lot of downtime where kids get antsy. And third, student behavior, setting and modeling clear, consistent expectations from the very first day of school.
But managing an inclusive classroom well, it goes even deeper than that. There's a huge social part to it. And one of the biggest challenges is actively working to overcome any misconceptions or stereotypes that students might have about their classmates with exceptionalities.
So how do you actually build that climate of acceptance? Well, it honestly starts with you, taking a moment to reflect on your own attitudes. You can also give the class some factual, age-appropriate information to help clear up any myths. And a really great strategy is to use mixed ability groups, what we call heterogeneous grouping, so students get to learn with and from each other. It helps break down those social barriers naturally.
And all of this, it really brings us back to the core mission, which I think is captured perfectly in this quote. The ultimate goal of inclusive education isn't to simplify everything, but to provide the right support. It's to make sure that exceptional students are challenged to excel and reach their highest potential right there alongside all of their peers.
Wow, we have covered a ton of ground, from evidence-based practices all the way to classroom climate. So let's end on a practical note. I want you to look at this new toolkit we've built and ask yourself, which single strategy could you put into practice tomorrow to make your classroom even more inclusive? What's your first step going to be?